Hey now, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl. I am here, top button unbuttoned, for another episode of Board Game Basics. The first thing I want to say is thank you to everyone who has given me so much positive feedback and for all the great show suggestions you've given me. It really means a lot to me. If you have any kind of critiques or suggestions or just positive feedback to give, please don't hesitate to send me an email at boardgamebrawl@gmail.com or just comment in the video down in YouTube or on Board Game Geek. I read every single comment that people make. I may not always respond to them in the most timely fashion, but I always try to if you ask a question. I love getting feedback and I love interacting with the people that take the time out of their busy day to watch my videos. It really means a lot to me. So enough of all that sappy stuff. Let's get on to today's topic. This is episode 4 and we're going to talk just a little bit about cooperative games. Now what's really interesting, I made this series of videos for people that are new to the hobby of modern board gaming. And if you are new, then the thought of a cooperative game might seem a little strange to you. If what you grew up on were games like Monopoly and Risk and the traditional mass market games, or if you're coming from the video game side of things and you've played a lot of, heavy shoot 'em ups and first-person shooters and MMOs, then you're probably not used to cooperative games. I mean, sure, there are cooperative modes in MMOs and things like that where you work together, but there's a lot of player-on-player combat and it can feel very competitive at times, grabbing for treasure. So the thought of a purely cooperative game might seem a little foreign, but really for those of us who have been in the hobby for a few years now, there's never been a better time to be a fan of cooperative board games. They have really hit their stride in the last couple of years. They've been around for a long time. There's always been some form of cooperative game, and if you're coming from the tabletop realm, then this is something you're already very familiar with the idea of Dungeons and Dragons, where a group of players are teaming up to go through these multiple adventures by working together. Of course, those games often have a dungeon master or a storyteller, depending on what RPG system that you're using, but even that individual ideally is not trying to actually beat the players that are cooperating together, the adventuring party. They're trying to just guide them through a story and make sure that they succeed while also being challenged. So for those people who are used to tabletop RPGs, cooperative games are nothing new, but if you're new to modern board gaming, then this might be a nice little introduction to you to these types of games. So like I said, cooperative games have been around for a while, but I think that the first major board game that really hit it big and showed people that cooperative board gaming could be a major influence on the industry was the Lord of the Rings from Reiner Knizia. Now, this was a game that was based more off of the storyline of the books rather than the movies. I'm not entirely sure I can't remember off the top of my head what year that this game came out. I think it might have been before that the movies really hit it big or right around the same time. But the artwork and the feel of the game is directly based off the mythos of the books of J.R.R. Tolkien as opposed to the movies. And Reiner Knizia, for those of you that don't know, is a very famous board game designer among modern enthusiasts. He has made a lot of games. A lot of games. He will make more games in a few months than most board game designers will make their entire life. So that's probably not that much of an exaggeration. And he's done a lot of very well-known games, not just the Lord of the Rings cooperative game, but Tigris and Euphrates, and he's done Blue Moon. I mean, just a lot of different types of games from a wide variety of genres. And the Lord of the Rings was probably, because it was attached to such a well-known designer and because it was very high quality and because it was from Fantasy Flight Games, who at the time was sort of a newer company but is now a powerhouse behemoth of a company, it really hit it big and showed people what cooperative games could do. Now fast forward some years and cooperative board games are everywhere. They're some of the most popular games on sites like Board Game Geek that people are constantly talking about. People just love the idea of coming to a table and actually working together with the people that you're with. This is especially true if you're with a family unit. Cooperative games are really big with families. Some of them have been tremendously big sellers because of this aspect. Some of the biggest ones have been Forbidden Island, which is a very light cooperative game, perfect for families, where you're trying to escape from a sinking island while capturing by getting all these treasures first and then getting off the island before it sinks. Very simple, very nice, beautiful components. Its sequel, Forbidden Desert, is a little more complicated. It's just like that next advanced step for families who are already used to Forbidden Island, where you're trying to escape from a desert with a bunch of ancient ruins treasure. Pandemic is probably one of the most popular cooperative games at this point. Perfect for families, but also for any type of gamer who likes puzzly, thinky strategy games. It's got a really great theme where you're trying to prevent the outbreak of a bunch of viruses from decimating the planet. So you all play first responders who are going around the world using your special abilities to remove these viruses, which are actually cubes. Very tense, very tough game. It was featured prominently on Will Wheaton's tabletop series where they played it, and so it really hit it big. You can actually find that game and the Lord of the Rings game and possibly even Forbidden Island on the stores of Target, of all places. I mean, this is how popular some of these games have gotten, where they've actually broken through and are not just in hobby game stores or friendly local gaming stores or online. You can actually get them at large big box stores, which is a huge step forward, not just for cooperative games, but for the gaming industry in general. So that's a great thing to see. Now, as cooperative games have gotten more and more popular in the last couple of years, they have evolved. They've become more complex, and they've sort of broadened their base to appeal to a wider variety of gamers. One of the most popular games of the last year or so is Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island. This is a very large, complex cooperative game that is meant to appeal to the sort of Eurogame crowd, who, if you don't know what a Eurogame is, you should watch one of my other episodes of Board Game Basics. It's meant to appeal to the Eurogame crowd by having very complex mechanics and worker placement mechanics together with a very, very strong theme. So I would tell you that it is a sort of blend of an Ameritrash game and a Eurogame with a pure cooperative element, which is really an amazing feat, and it has succeeded with a lot of different groups of gamers and has had that cross appeal. And basically the theme is that much like the famous story, you are all stranded on a desert island, and there are different scenarios that you go through trying to survive, just to eat, just to have shelter, just to hunt and survive wild animal attacks, and whatever the scenario might be, surviving a bunch of cannibals or trying to build a fire to signal for help. Things like that. It's just an awesome game. Now, going back a second, I mentioned that a lot of Euro gamers that game like Robinson Crusoe was meant to appeal to Euro gamers. The reason I mention that is because a lot of times there are people in our hobby who do not like cooperative games. This is especially true, at least in my experience, of people who are more into heavy strategy Euro games, very thinky, puzzly games, and who are also much more competitive than your average person. This is not a slam against those people at all. This is simply what their gaming habits are, and that's perfectly fine. And these people tend not to like cooperative games as much because they don't really see the appeal of working together with a group of players against the game itself, rather than competing against the other players at the table. For them, competing against the other players at the table is the appeal of playing a board game. And sometimes I totally get that. Most of the games in my collection are competitive games, but I also really love cooperative games. So for me personally, I can see the appeal of both. But I'm saying this because you need to be aware, if you are going to your gaming group and you have a really awesome cooperative game that you like a lot, that you want to play, you need to be aware that there may probably be people in your group who are not as keen on cooperative games. So you should really do your best to make sure that it's going to be okay that you play that type of game with them, and also try to make it an enjoyable experience for them. I have played cooperative games with people who did not like cooperative games, but because we really took our time and we made sure to make them feel as welcome and as involved as possible, they ended up having fun anyways. Because at the end of the day, it's about having interactions with the other players, regardless of whether it's competitive or cooperative. If you have a good time, then any kind of foibles you may have with the game itself are sort of mitigated, and you don't really worry about that as much because you're having fun with your friends and family, and that's really all that's important. I will say that one other complaint that a lot of people have about cooperative games is that some of them struggle from something that we call alpha gamer syndrome. This is some of that terminology that you're going to hear a lot as you get more and deeper into the hobby. An alpha gamer is someone, this is primarily in, I suppose it can apply to many different types of games. If you're playing a competitive game, there can be one player who sort of dominates as far as rules, lawyering, and things like that. But specifically in cooperative games, an alpha gamer is someone who sort of has figured out the game, at least according to them, knows exactly what everyone should do, and has no qualms about making that fact known to the other players, telling people exactly what they should do to win. You should go here, you should definitely do that. Why did you do that? You can't do that. You have to go here and do this, or we're going to lose. You have to listen to me. I know what to do. You go here, you go here, you go here, and we're going to win this out. A lot of people do not like that about these individuals. They don't like that aspect of you telling me what to do. We're supposed to be working together. We should all have a common say here. Now, there's nothing wrong with someone who wants to just say, I have a very good idea about what we should do now. I've kind of figured out that if we do these 3 things here, that we have a better chance of winning. You should absolutely volunteer that kind of information because you're all trying to win. You want to do well, and everyone should feel involved. But you should never be ordering people around, and you should always make sure that other people can have their voices heard. I've played in too many cooperative games at this point where other people at the table just feel intimidated by one or more alpha gamers and just sort of sit there like a wallflower. Now, in some degree, that's their fault, but to other degrees, it's the alpha gamers' fault who did not make those other players feel welcome and involved in the game. So it is something that you need to consider and watch out for, especially if you have other people in the game who you already know are not into cooperative games. That sort of personality, that alpha gamer syndrome, is definitely going to exacerbate people. In a worst case scenario, if you absolutely cannot get the alpha gamer to shut up and just let you play, do what you want to do is my #1 piece of advice. You are there to have fun. However you want to have fun, you should do it. If you don't want to listen to the advice of someone, if everyone else doesn't want to, take whatever action you want. You may make some other players angry, but ultimately it's about having fun at the table, and maybe it will teach that person a lesson that, you know, if you really want to get your message across and work cooperatively and win the game, you need to put your message out there in a better way, not just bossing people around. But that's definitely one of the flaws of a cooperative game, is the alpha gamer. But I will say this, is that when a cooperative game works, when everyone is having fun and when everyone is working together in a very fun, thoughtful, and fast-paced way, then cooperative games really shine. It is a team-building exercise. It helps families come closer together. It helps build friendships. I've made more friends from playing cooperative games than I have from playing competitive games. I will say that for sure. And I think that while the amount of cooperative games coming out may stabilize, they're here to stay. And they're going to get better and better and more innovative. And if you have never played a cooperative board game before, you owe it to yourself to try one. Maybe not a super heavy, long, and deep one like Arkham Horror or Eldritch Horror, but there are games out there for everything that you like, for every different type of play style, for different play lengths and complexity. There's tons of different options. And I'm actually going to show you just a few of those options now, just a variety of different types and themes of games. And we're going to come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright folks, that's the end of another episode of Board Game Basics. I hope you learned a lot about cooperative games. I hope it's something that you enjoy. If you've had bad experiences with them before, please give them another chance, because I think they're fantastic games and they're only going to get bigger and better from here. And most importantly, they're a perfect gateway game for a lot of new gamers to the hobby. My name is Nick, this has been Board Game Brawl, and remember, in order to brawl, you gotta know the basics. Take care.